These young people create compositions from fiery flowers, comets, and stars in the sky. Such events will always amaze and enthrall everyone, from the young to the old. Almost every holiday these days ends with spectacular fireworks. Some movies and television shows simply cannot be shown without explosions. In Generation UA, Ukrainian professionals will talk about pyrotechnics, which is much more interesting than just flashes in the sky. In general terms, pyrotechnics is the science of fire, but if to be more specific about how people understand pyrotechnics in this day and age, these are products made for a certain purpose that can be bought and used in everyday life. Actually, from what has been confirmed, we're speaking about China. This is more than 3,000 years ago. In truth, the first explosive of a different kind, not black powder, appeared literally in the last 250 years. Prior to that, there was just black powder, which, according to all the available records, most likely appeared in China. As far as I know, at the moment there are 467 professional pyrotechnicians in Ukraine. You need to have some pretty strong nerves, because you understand that at one moment or another you have your finger on the button, on the remote. Not just the charge, but also people, equipment, buildings, or just about anything. And if you push that button at the wrong second, all kinds of accidents can happen, and they all will have financial or criminal consequences.
Это все влечет за собой как минимум проблемы финансового плана, да, либо уголовного. Начинается оно все из детства.
It all starts in one's childhood, one way or the other. All young boys start playing with fire, then blasting caps while playing with toy guns, and then everything else on the list naturally follows. Some get over it, some don't. It just so happened this way. To be honest, I had no intention of becoming a pyrotechnician, but after serving in the army, it just so happened that my friends invited me to the Dovzhenko film studio. They were working on a feature film about the Second World War at the time. Since then, I have actively been working with guns. They asked me to be a gunsmith for them. I must admit that I liked it. After all, if I didn't like it then, I would be doing something else today.
Занимаюсь вещами, связанными с огнем и пиротехникой не очень давно.
I haven't been working with things related to fire and pyrotechnics for very long. 5 years ago, I started practicing fire performances. Moreover, it just so happened that I married a stuntman and became more involved in the film industry, where I became interested in special effects.
Теме кино и заинтересовалась еще спецэффектами, и меня эта тема стала просто вот интересовать. Фаер-шоу очень много используется.
Fire performances require a lot of pyrotechnics for the stage design and to add the wow effect for the viewing audience. But there are nuances in how pyrotechnics are used. I started looking into how other groups use them, what they do, how they apply them. When I started taking into account all the drawbacks and nuances, I began trying to make them better, more efficient, to do it my way. The classification of pyrotechnics. First, all explosive substances, military ammunition, and so on are classified separately, and we do not even consider them, because a military engineer or a sapper cannot be a pyrotechnician, and conversely, a pyrotechnician cannot be a military engineer. Speaking of consumer pyrotechnics, they're all based on non-explosive substances, so to say.
Она вся сделана на невзрывчатых веществах, скажем так. вся бытовая пиротехника и вся красивая
All the household pyrotechnics that we see in fireworks are all nothing more than propellants. Therefore, they are less dangerous, although accidents can still happen.
бывают случаи. Кино запрещено.
It is forbidden to use military ammunition in movies. There's what we call film pyrotechnics, which are based on gunpowder and gunpowder-based compounds. We make explosion simulators. Ultimately, we have to produce them.
Хотя есть стандартные имитаторы.
Although there are standard mortar hit simulators and there are military simulators, but they can be dangerous for actors and the film crew.
Которые могут быть опасны для актеров и группы. Мы же делаем.
But we make them lighter, so that we can detonate charges near actors.
Мы можем себе позволить рядом с актером взорвать заряд.
There is such a thing as a bullet impact simulator. Essentially, it is a tiny charge with a certain blood reservoir strapped onto a person, which goes off upon receiving an electric impulse, tearing the clothing and letting the blood spurt out.
I'm a
pyrotechnician working in the filmmaking industry. Among other things, I worked on television for quite a long time. Basically, my team and I made all kinds of special effects that are currently used in films and TV series. My first difficult job was when there were 10 Pepper-Shah submachine guns, out of which only one worked, but all of them had to be in working condition. For probably the first 2 weeks, the whole crew, including the director, saw me elbow deep in oil and with a hammer in my hand. So I worked on those guns, and in the end they became operable.
Все работы по-своему интересны, тем более, что
all jobs are interesting, especially since each one of them is like no other. There is always something new and interesting to do in this field. Now, the movie titled The Secret Diary of Simon Petlura is in production. We made one great explosion for this film. In addition to artillery shelling, we made a really cool explosion with logs flying 150 meters up into the air.
Киношные спецэффекты мелкие.
I like small-scale cinematic special effects because they are very interesting. The task forces me to use my brain and solve specific problems. And in the end, I create something miraculous. My work with special effects started when I became interested in stone gel and the effect of fire burning on bare skin. Those are the developments of American stuntmen and pyrotechnicians. I watched their videos and wanted to do it myself. I spent a very long time going through a lot of information, reading textbooks and experimenting a lot, and constantly mixing some substances in the kitchen. That's how I started, and is what I became well versed in.
С чего начало и что начало получаться. Эксперименты я делаю на себе или...
I experiment on myself and on my friends. It still needs a little bit of refinement, but so far the current result is good enough for burning fire on bare skin for a minute. It was also interesting to work on the green fire mixture, so that the fire would have a green glow. Improving it was interesting, because it can be bought and used, but it did not satisfy me, because there were too many yellow and orange flames at the start, and I had to figure out how to make the green brighter.
И надо было что-то придумать такое, чтобы зеленый цвет был ярче. Всегда очень интересно монтировать для наших выступлений.
Setting up equipment for our performances is always interesting, as well as making our own fireworks instead of buying prepackaged ones. Especially since fireworks, in the usual sense of the word, are not used in performances. And this is stage design equipment, so that certain types of pyrotechnics would work in the background.
Виды пиротехники.
Experimenting with remote activation was interesting. The idea was to not run around with a torch poking the fireworks, but simply pushing a button to detonate them at the designated moment in time. The first condition which they are lenient about now is service in the army. According to the safety requirements, pyrotechnicians cannot be under the age of 21. And the second condition is probably having a specialized education. It is very desirable. It has to either be a chemistry education or military engineer training in the army, or, with rare exceptions, some other education. I had no particular difficulties. It so happened that I went to serve in the army and passed an intensive course on explosive and weapons. Later, when I started working with explosive, allowed and film shooting, they did not present a major problem for me. Calculation methods, yes, those are important and difficult. I realized that I did not know chemistry well enough, although I always thought I was good at it. But it all comes with experience. Anyhow, I already knew the basics when I came here. The minimal requirement is extensive knowledge of chemistry. The fact that my mother is a chemist by education helped me out a great deal. I have no special education myself, but people around me can advise where to look, what to think, and where to go. The difficulty for me is with our country. The fact is that acquiring certain necessary reagents here is complicated. I have to order these reagents from different places. There is no one large market where I can buy everything I need. For example, I need just 10 grams of some reagent, but I have to order it from various cities, and they sell them by the kilograms or in large sacks. That's the difficulty. Of course, there's always the fear factor in this business. Fear is the self-preservation instinct. If you have no fear, this can be lethally dangerous for you and all those around you. The fear factor forces you to always be cautious. There's a wise, age-old saying, you cannot reinvent the bicycle. Someone has already invented it before your time. Your task is to either combine two solutions or invent your own one. But it's like this with everything. It's either something you've already seen or read, or it's on the crossroads of different sciences.
Что-то у тебя на стыке нескольких каких-то разных наук, но вот оно есть решение, но вот на стыке, да. Бывает такое.
It happens sometimes when the director gives you a task that leads to a dead end. So you think for 2 or 3 days, design a blueprint in your mind, and realize that something is just not working. In any case, it is all through testing. Why? Because it's all difficult. I sometimes called my colleagues to ask them if they had done something similar. And there is nothing shameful about that. They told me that they had found a solution, and at least that gives you some direction, some orientation. My colleagues can also call me and ask if I had ever tried this or that experiment. And if I had done so, I would share with them my idea for a solution to the problem.